All right. Now, I am really excited to welcome Jordan Boesch, the co-founder and CEO of 7shifts, to the stage. Jordan, I got to know, how did you go from being a junior web dev to founding 7shifts?
First off, thanks for having me, Jason. Yeah, it was an interesting story. I actually grew up working in quick service restaurants for my dad, who ran some Quiznos locations, and I witnessed kind of this issue of him scheduling and managing staff. And so I taught myself how to write some code to help him solve his problem. And I fell in love with programming, just trying to solve his problems. And I worked at Best Buy, and I worked a bunch of jobs, and then I went away to school to Ottawa, and I ended up just working and coding on my own and building stuff. And eventually I got a job as a software engineer and worked for a bunch of different software companies. And I moved overseas to France, did some consulting for companies back home. And then I moved back to my home province in Saskatchewan. And it was when I moved back that there was, at some point, it was in 2013, I believe it was, when 7shifts as the side project that was, had like a PayPal payment flow.
And started at your dad's Quiznos, right?
Yeah, now I actually made enough money where I could do it full time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I quit my job as a software engineer and got this little 10 by 10 office space because I wanted to feel like I was like leaving the house to go to work. And it was about a month into doing that, I found it like, it was kind of boring working by myself. I always wanted to work with a team, but and so that's kind of where it started software engineering and then.
And so how many years in between that first line of code for your dad's Quiznos and then taking the leap to do it full time by yourself?
I would probably say like 5 years or 4 years. Like it was never like, it was always just kind of this thing in the side back burner type of thing where it just made little money here and there. And it wasn't really, it was just a fun side project. I just enjoyed working on it to learn.
Did you get paid in subs?
I thankfully he did pay me in real money, but I did eat free subs. So that was a bonus. Yeah.
And so part of that journey in between, of course, you got to work with Catherine from Coconut Calendar, who's a TechTO alumni. Would love to hear about your time at Coconut and sort of how it transformed you and made you into a founder.
Yeah, it was awesome working with Catherine, and we were early days at Coconut, and it was like myself, her, and Romeo, and it was back when it was called 24-hour assistant, so it wasn't rebranded a Coconut Calendar yet, and so I got it. It was an immense joy of working on something new and kind of fresh, and got to really build the foundation, or kind of rebuild rather, and really high collaborative environment. And then, I would kind of go home and, I'd also work on 7shifts. And so I really had two loves. Like I really did like enjoy working on both of these pieces of software.
And when you did leave Coconut, was the first thing you did start working on 7shifts full time, or was there something in between?
So there was something in between. I actually moved from Saskatoon back to my home city, which is Regina. And I ended up taking a job at another tech company, just working remotely. And so I did that before then moving back to Saskatoon. The journey is all over the map, but I ended up coming back and working at Vendasta as a software engineer when Vendasta was like 20 some people. And now obviously they're much bigger, and they were, talking about going public. And I learned a lot from a lot of folks there and got to build my network.
Amazing. And so all these years you were going home to your second love and working on it. Did you know the whole time that eventually this was going to be your number one focus? Or was there a time that sort of shifted and said, this is now, like, why not the first year? Why the fifth year of working on it?
I was still in the midst of just learning how to write code. I think I was just figuring things out. And I always kind of knew in the back of my mind that this was going to be the thing that actually makes money. And I did try and get it out there earlier than like much earlier, even as I was working on it, because I'd work my job in Ottawa at an agency, and I would go home and I would literally sit there and work till like 2 a.m., like pretty much every night. And then
Right.
on Saturdays, I'd print off these papers of screenshots of the product, and I would like walk into restaurants and be like, hey, like, check this out. Do you want, like, didn't even have a laptop. I only had a desktop. I couldn't afford a laptop. And so I was like trying to sell this, like these pictures of software on paper. It was absolutely ludicrous.
But was it totally vaporware? Was it literally just the printouts, or you were busy building it behind the scenes as well?
No, it fully existed, but like I
Okay.
couldn't bring my computer, like my desktop computer, to the restaurant to like demo
Yeah.
people. So I had to like print it off.
Incredible. And yeah, man, you must have been excited when the tablets first started coming out. You must have been like, this is brilliant.
A great novel invention.
Yeah. Now you talked about leaving and starting sort of by yourself. I don't know if you said like a 10 by 10 room. How did you sort of put together a founding team after working on it solo for so many years?
I had kind of made some connections through my time at Coconut, through another developer, Johannes, who was in Regina at the same time as me, working for a large telco, and my wife, Andre, was also kind of working, you know, at like the health. I think she was at the health region at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted 7shifts to be. I was like, this is, yeah. It was kind of boring working on one project by yourself. Like, I love working with smart people, high collaborative environments, like pushing things out. Like, I love the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, I want to go build a big company. And where do you go to build big companies? I was like, oh, go to the Bay Area. That's where they build all these big companies. And so we applied to some tech accelerators. I told my wife, Andre, and Johannes, I was like, guys, like, if we get in, like, you guys have to quit your jobs. Like, do you want to, like, would you want to come and move down there with me? And they're both like, yeah, of course. And then we did the interview, and then we got in, and we kind of, I remember closing the laptop lid. We used like Skype to like have the conversation. And I was like, are you guys, and they're like, well, I guess this was like Monday. And they're like, okay, well, I guess I'll tell my boss on Friday that I'm quitting. It was just kind of very sporadic, but we haven't looked back.
So you ended up moving down to SF. How long were you there for? And did you end up launching in SF as well?
Yeah, I think there's like, I mean, we already had a bit of revenue. We were at like a couple K in MRR, like nothing crazy. So we had a bit of revenue, but we went down there, we lived there, and we were beside all these companies that were really hustling and like moving and like at a very quick speed. And I've never been a part of that before. So it was like you were just one of the culture where like you barely ate, you kind of just worked and you kind of went to sleep, and you didn't really see the sunlight for a while, because like this was actually in like a basement. Like this accelerator was kind of in a basement, so you didn't get a ton of
That's where all the
sunlight.
best quality accelerators are, right? In a basement in San Francisco.
Caged, your foot is chained to the desk. Yeah, no, it was a great learning experience, and I met a lot of great people there, and I saw what was, I feel like, the bar in terms of the hustle and grind that people talk about, but who don't really know until they see it.
Right. And so it was interesting because earlier tonight, Michelle spoke about how providing capital could disrupt some of these accelerators. But for you, it seems like it was a positive experience in setting and being able to see your peers and setting the bar and telling you what good looked like. Reflecting back on your experience at the accelerator, maybe tell us a little bit more about the accelerator you joined and what your advice would be to sort of up and coming founders when they're thinking about how to, fund their business and find their sort of their tribe as they build their product.
Yeah, I mean, we had a great experience. It was called Boost. It was the accelerator, and they were like Bitcoin at the time, and then they went to do other things. And I'm not sure. I think they focused back on AI for a little bit, and but it was run by like Adam Draper and Tim Draper, who are like pretty well known venture capitalists down there. And so we ended up raising some money down there from them, and that really helped kickstart what became 7shifts. We weren't focused on the restaurant space. We're in this kind of like awkward phase where we got all these requests for stuff to build, and I'm really someone that doesn't like to be the jack of all, master of none. Like I want to be like, if you don't evoke like an F, yeah, this is the best product. Like if I can't evoke that emotion from you, then why am I building this? It just doesn't make sense. And spending all this energy. So we truly, I think for us, aligning with like a great accelerator that like fostered this community allowed us to really, really like take a step back and say like, we're going to go focus on restaurants. And it was uncomfortable because it meant isolating 2/3 of our existing customers. So they're going to like visit
what
our
kind of
website.
customers were those? Like what sort of
It's like
industries were the other 2/3?
everything from like retail, dog grooming companies, medical, construction, like there's like everyone in a cat has to schedule, people. And so
Right.
we just thought in 2013, like this is like this industry has been kind of largely forgotten and hasn't adopted technology. And there was this kind of green space or white space, if you will. And everyone said it was stupid to like try and target restaurants because margins are low. They don't pay for anything. But, that was really when we started to see early signs of like restaurant tech, POS, starting to raise like gobs of money and like, or start to go on that trajectory where, a few of them are, multi-billion-dollar valued companies now. But, yeah, so we had the fortune to get a really good head start and partner with all these.
How did those conversations go when you decided to focus on your niche to evoke that wow feeling and you had to fire 2/3 of your customers? Like, did you just sort of neglect them and hope that they would churn and leave you alone? Did you reach out proactively and let them know?
Trying to remember, honestly, like we for sure changed the site to have like pictures of restaurant people. So like if you weren't there, you'd probably be like, hey, like this is kind of weird. But yeah, we did notice churn. It kind of went like this for a little while, and then it started going like this.
Right.
And now, looking back, like it was the best move we ever made because we solidified so many great partnerships early on where we were kind of like, we're good labor management, go to market partner for restaurants. And, and then we can build all these restaurant specific things now, to kind of help foster that and make it go further.
The more you focus, actually, the more there is to build, isn't it? Isn't it funny that way?
Yeah, you start to see in another lens. And so I think what was really encouraging, and I think like a lot of folks may resonate with in the early stages of founding a business, for us, we felt like we were being pulled in a lot of different directions. Like if you don't define where you're going and what your purpose is, and granted, there's a lot of figuring out that happens along the way, but like the customers, for better or worse, kind of start defining it for you. And you're going to get pulled in a lot of different ways and you're going to see opportunities, but it's your job to figure out, kind of as Michelle stated, like, they saw the writing on the wall in terms of where they wanted to focus on that next opportunity, and not go with the Airbnb route, and go into commerce. And I think like those moments are really important to recognize because you can't do everything. You have to understand and measure and have conviction around that next big step you need to take.
So that's a lot about your customers, but how did you sort of convey that conviction to your investors? Like, can you remember your first fundraise and what that felt like and how you did?
Yeah, I was very poor. And so like I've gotten better. I'm still not the greatest, but I feel like I've made a lot of progress. But in any case, early days, we got some angel funding from the Bay Area. Then we moved that back to Canada, at which point people are called us stupid and crazy for going back to Saskatchewan. They needed to know where it was on a map.
Right.
But yeah, I think like when our seed round was led by Relay Ventures in Toronto, who's an investor in Touch Bistro. So like they understood the restaurant space, but I kind of made the connection through Touch Bistro, who was a partner of ours, and kind of climbed in that way. And I was like flying to Toronto every like 3 weeks, it felt like, and I was pitching them, constantly pitching. And like I joke because it was almost to the point of exhaustion for them, where they like let me come back, and I kept showing better numbers, and I'd implemented things, and they were like, "Okay, Jordan, you're not pitching us anymore. You're updating us." And I knew in that moment, I was like, okay, like this sounds like a great partner. And Alex Baker at Relay ended up joining our board, and is still on our board and super valuable. So I think, they took a risk on us, like investing in the first company they invested in the prairies. And so
amazing. And that's you've sort of focused on the successful one, but to get to that one, how much other flying to the Valley, to Toronto, to Vancouver,
Oh,
abroad? Like how, until the point that we were updating, the love of your life. What did it feel like?
yeah, it was like, it's super frustrating. Like fundraising was really hard, but I actually really love pitching and selling the vision and telling the
Mhm.
story, which actually works out because that turns out that's what I'm supposed to do in my job. But all these flights, I burnt so much money, and I didn't have it. I didn't know even how to use like rewards properly or Aeroplan. I really regret that part. But I got rejected a gazillion times for sure. Like we even had strong growth. We had like 300% year over year growth. Like we were just, it was like, how can you? And it was, I got, yeah, there was a lot of rejection along the way. I think a large part of it was, I was flying to places like the Bay Area, and like people were like, oh, like, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, I'm from Canada. And it's like, oh, like Toronto or Vancouver. It's like, oh no, Saskatchewan. And they're like, what? Where's that? Like, it was like I was a story that they were going to tell like their colleagues of this kid that came from like the prairies, and like they kind of laughed me out of the room at times. So
And
I
so
don't know.
did you
It
see that
was
as an advantage or a disadvantage? If you could do it again, would you have skipped the part where you go back to Saskatchewan, or would you have doubled down on it?
No, I don't think I would have changed anything. I have a lot of like prairie pride and Canadian pride in trying to build and be
Hmm.
part of the ecosystem that we're building here, and I think we have tremendous potential.
Yeah.
But there's pros and cons that come with it. The pros are very like, yeah, your capital is going to last longer. Like we raise U.S. funds, it lasts us like twice as long. But the cons of it
Hmm.
were very clear. Of yeah, like you're going to miss the senior talent. So I spent a lot of time maintaining a network there and in Toronto, and trying to bridge our team into these areas and to introduce them to people and say, spend an hour with this person, spend an hour here, get to know these people, because that's when the magic starts to happen, is when people
Yes.
start learning, and you need to accelerate the learning. It's not that
Yeah.
people are incapable of doing something. It's the learning velocity. And you need, if we can find people that have a high learning velocity, I want to download as much information into their brain as possible to kind of get going. And so
Yes.
I spent more time finding and hiring people with high learning velocity potential, and downloading, and kind of networking them in. And so,
I love that. And of course, since the time where you had to explain to people where Saskatchewan was on a map, you guys have grown a lot since then. Do you want to give the audience here a sense of the size of 7shifts today?
yeah, so 7shifts is 150 employees across Saskatoon, which is where I'm based. We about a third of our company's in Toronto.
Hmm.
We have a number of folks in New York now. We have some folks in Calgary, and so we're also nearing 20,000 restaurant locations. Mostly, like 85% of them are in the U.S.
Hmm.
And but one in 50 restaurant workers in the U.S. uses 7shifts actively. So we're yeah,
Wow.
and we also it's going to be announced this week, but we just closed our Series B, and so
Yes.
this week there'll be hopefully some press pickup, and the details will be shared a little bit later. But we're obviously ramping up hiring and building our team, and continue to grow, because we're excited to build a great story here.
And going from part-time evening project to 150 people, what surprised you the most in that sort of scaling journey?
Um, the What surprised me the most is, yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, obviously, like processes keep changing constantly, and
Hmm.
like, and you always try. You don't try to over, processorize. That's not a word, but things
It could
you
be
try.
though. It could
Yeah,
be. We can make it a word. We can make it a thing at TechTO. Processorize. Uh-huh.
processorize. Oh
Yeah.
god, that's what I'm known for now. But I'm a big believer in kind of the, document the 20% that gets you the 80% results.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so really making sure we're continuing to run lean, and as we hire folks, and really being cognizant of the individuals we bring onto the team, that they subscribe to our core values, behaviors, and philosophies of how we think about business. And
Yeah.
I've been early stages, like I would, part ways with people, like just be like, hey, like, you're great at understanding the car, and you're super knowledgeable, but you're not willing to get in the car and drive it, and I need people that can drive cars.
Uh-huh.
And
Or
and so
tractors, if we're in the prairie. Yeah.
and tractors. But yeah, I think like getting people that are just like hell bent on on growing a big business and are going to work through the trenches with you is really important. And you try and just maintain that for, as you grow and scale. And because it's going to change a little bit, right? Like I have a family now. And so I'm not working 14-hour days. But I did that to kind of get to where we are as well.
I got to ask one more question before we head over to a quick lightning round rapid fire. And that's that it's also a very funny time, a very different time since you've been doing this for a long time, to be working with restaurants. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what it's like in the best of times working with the restaurant industry to adopt new technology and specifically what the last year has been like. It's been, I imagine, super difficult for a lot of your clients and what you guys have done and how you support them through this.
Yeah, it was devastating for us, honestly. And I mean, for the industry as a whole. First off, it was terrible. And in March, I was going out to raise our Series B. I was like, yeah, here I go. And I got a call from our investors in New York, like, hey, you guys are coming down here to talk to investors, cancel your trip. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, no, you're in a bubble right now. You don't understand how bad it is. And I was like, okay, cancel trips, blah, blah, blah. We had to furlough and lay off 40 staff. And thankfully, the culture is strong. All these folks that we had to lay off, a handful of them reached out to me. They're like, hey, this must be so hard for you. Just let me know when I can come back. And I was like, it's hard for me. I'm sorry for you that I had to do this. And so thankfully, we had a lot of great folks on the team, and we rallied together to kind of go into support mode, support our restaurants. And we lost at least $1 million in ARR just from that moment. And we recovered
just from closures of clients.
Account holds, closures, people just I don't know if I can pay this. And it's don't worry. I think some people were just well, you could have brought prices up 10% for those remaining. It's no, that's not, look, if their industry is going down, we're going down because it's only kind of trying to extend the ultimate fate of what restaurants were truly facing, which was somewhat of a demise for a period. But we came back in September, and we've been hitting record-breaking months every month in 2021 in the company's history. February beat January, March beat February, April beat. And so we're setting new records, and we're seeing a huge adoption for restaurants adopting technology, not just third-party delivery, but team management, engagement products that really connect the employers to the staff and help them retain their best people and hire them. So it's been a really great journey to see the bounce back happen.
That's awesome. Okay, we got to put 1 minute up for rapid fire questions. I got to ask you some really important 7 shifts related questions. You ready?
Oh God, here we go. Sure.
Yeah. Chocolate or vanilla?
Oh, vanilla.
Soup or salad?
I would say salad.
Cheese or pepperoni?
Cheese.
Okay, interesting. A lot of people are going to be looking deep into these answers to see what that really means about the 7 Shifts leadership team. Your favorite restaurant?
I would say in Saskatoon here, Keo's. It's an amazing Thai restaurant.
What makes it so great?
I mean, it's so consistent. It's so consistently good. I don't know how else to explain it. The spice,
would you say it's the scheduling of their wait staff?
Yeah, funny enough, they don't use 7 shifts, which is why would I eat there, you might ask. And so I need to figure out what I do now.
Yeah, come on, you got to get your favorite restaurant as a client. That's important.
I know.
What's the number one thing that people should do when they visit Saskatoon?
They should take the Prairie Lily Cruise. Our investors took it from New York. They came up here, and it's just this old river cruise that you get you can get some cocktails on. It's a lemonade cocktail, and you can have some drinks, and it takes you down the Saskatoon River. So
let's blow that service up. Make sure we drop it in the chat, team. I think that's going to be awesome. And then last question: what product or service do you wish exists today that doesn't yet?
That is a very tricky question to answer. I don't know. That's a hard one.
You're allowed to think about it, but then you got to come back and you got to tag us on social media and let us know when you got your answers. That sound good? How about a layup?
Yeah.
How can the TechTO community learn more about 7 Shifts and help you continue to grow?
Yeah, you can learn more about 7 Shifts by checking out our website, 7shifts.com. It's number 7. Shifts as in shift work. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Just my first name, last name. I'm sure you can find me. And we're all over Instagram as well. So if you want to know more, please reach out. Check out our careers page if you want to learn more about the company. We've got an awesome Kick Out the Jam section where all of our shifties post like their favorite songs in a Spotify playlist. So if you want to see what we're listening to, go check that out. You can do that on our careers page as well.
That's awesome. What an amazing story. Can we get a huge emoji round of applause for Jordan, the 7shifts team, putting the Saskatchewan tech ecosystem on the map? Thanks for joining us on TechTO Together.
Thanks, Jason.